For 22 years, Buell existed. Every bike that left the factory never used an engine of its own. In 1993, Harley bought into Buell. They bought the rest of it by 2003 and owned all of it by the time they killed it. So the story everyone tells is simple. Harley built a Harley with a different name on the tank, got bored of it, and put it down. That story is wrong, and the part it gets wrong is the only part of Buell that ever actually mattered. To begin with, what is Buell, and how did it start? But this is my question for you. Did you know which Buell sold the most units? I will tell you the answer in a few minutes, but I want you to think or guess, and we'll see if you got that right. Now, back on the part. Erik Buell grew up on a farm in Pennsylvania, worked as a motorcycle mechanic to pay for engineering school, and spent his weekends racing AMA, Superbike, and Formula One. Harley hired him as a chassis engineer not long after. In 1982, he quit to build a motorcycle Harley had no interest in building. That first bike was the RW750, a two-stroke, square-4 engine built around a British Barton design, wrapped in a chassis Buell engineered himself. The power delivery was violent. Riders who tested it described it as a light switch, nothing, then 40 horsepower arriving in half a second, mid-corner, whether you wanted it or not. Buell completed the bike in 1983. Only 2 were ever built. He sold them under the Buell Motor Company name for $15,900 apiece, and the racing press liked what they saw. Then the AMA killed the class. By 1986, Formula One racing was gone, replaced by Superbike rules. The RW750 was never built to meet. Buell had a chassis philosophy, 2 unsellable racers, and no market left to race in. What he did not have was an engine. Designing one from scratch needed money. A one-man company working out of East Troy, Wisconsin, simply did not have. So Buell looked for whatever was sitting around unused, and Harley happened to have exactly that. A cache of about 50 XR1000 engines, race-bred V-twins built for a homologation special, Harley had already discontinued, sitting in a parts room with nowhere to go. Buell bought them. The result was the RR1000 Battletwin, released in 1987, Buell's first true street motorcycle. Only 50 of them were ever built, 1 engine per bike, until the cash ran out. A Harley engine bolted into a frame nobody at Harley would have approved, sold under a name Harley did not yet have any stake in. Buell was not getting rich doing this. He was barely keeping the doors open, building bikes almost one at a time in a shop in East Troy, while bigger companies built thousands. This was not Buell borrowing Harley's identity. It was the opposite. He needed an engine. Harley happened to have unsold ones sitting in a parts bin. The arrangement stuck because it worked, not because anyone at either company planned it that way. The chassis was always his. The mass centralization, the weight balance, the idea that a motorcycle should carry its weight low and close to the center instead of spread out, all of that came from Buell himself, years before other manufacturers started using the same language to sell their own bikes. The engine, from the very first street bike he ever sold, never was. That is the arrangement the next 22 years would run on. In 1993, Harley-Davidson bought a minority stake in Buell. Buell was 6 years into building small numbers of Harley-engined sport bikes out of Wisconsin, and Harley needed something its accountants could not manufacture in-house: credibility, with a type of rider who was never going to buy a cruiser. Harley's own buyers were getting older every year through the 1990s, and the company had no answer for the 25-year-old who wanted a bike that leaned into a corner instead of one built to be admired, parked outside a bar. The money changed what Buell could build. 2 new models, the Thunderbolt and the Lightning, actually competed with the sport bikes coming out of Japan and Italy, instead of just borrowing a Harley engine and hoping. The racing press liked them. By 1998, Buell had become the second highest selling non-Japanese sport bike brand in America. Only Ducati sold more. That same year, Harley bought a majority stake. Buell stopped being an independent company that happened to use Harley parts. It became a subsidiary that happened to still have somebody else's name over the door. The XB9R Firebolt arrived in 2002, funded by that majority ownership, and it was the most radical thing Buell had built yet, a fuel tank built into the frame itself, a swing arm doing double duty as the oil reservoir, a brake rotor mounted on the outer rim of the wheel instead of at the hub. None of it borrowed from Harley, all of it paid for with Harley's money. By 2003, Harley owned all of it, every share, every patent, every building. Erik Buell was still running day-to-day engineering, but the company that once could not afford to design its own engine now could not make a single decision without its parents' approval. Buell needed Milwaukee's sign-off on a paint color, let alone an entire new model. That is not an exaggeration for effect. That is what full ownership actually means for the person who founded the company. Look at the shape of that timeline for a second. 6 years independent, 5 years as a minority investment, 5 more as a majority holding. Then total ownership, for the next 6 years, right up until Harley decided to shut it down. If you were building the case that Buell was never really its own company, this is where you would start. And for a while, that case looks completely airtight. Here is what they left out completely. None of Buell's actual engineering signature came from Harley, not one piece of it. Start with the frame. On a Buell Firebolt, the fuel does not sit in a tank bolted on top of the frame the way it does on almost every other motorcycle ever built, including every Harley has ever sold. The frame itself is hollow, and the fuel lives inside it. That single decision drops the center of mass by inches, and inches matter enormously on a bike that is supposed to change direction quickly. Nobody had done this on a production motorcycle before. Buell did it in 2002. Then the swing arm. Instead of running an oil line to a separate tank somewhere else on the bike, taking up space and adding weight exactly where you do not want it, Buell ran the engine oil through the swing arm itself. The part that is already there to hold the rear wheel does double duty as the oil reservoir. Again, nobody else was doing this. Then the brake. Every conventional motorcycle mounts its disc near the hub, at the center of the wheel. Buell mounted it on the outer rim instead, what the company called a zero-torsional load rotor. Moving that mass from the center of the wheel to the edge sounds like it should make the wheel heavier to spin up. The engineering reality runs the other way. Redistributing that mass away from the hub reduces the rotating inertia the front suspension has to manage, which means the fork reacts to bumps and lean changes faster. It looks strange the first time you see it. It is also the reason Buell still uses it on every sport bike the company builds today, decades after Harley stopped having any say in the matter. Put a number on what all 3 of those decisions add up to. A Buell Lightning from this era weighed around 386 pounds dry. A Harley Sportster from the same model years weighed close to 500 pounds fueled and ready to ride. Same parent company, same balance sheet, and 2 motorcycles built to solve completely opposite problems. None of this required a Harley engine to exist. None of it came from Harley's design team, Harley's patents, or Harley's engineering culture, which spent those same years building air-cooled V-twins for people who wanted a straight line and a loud exhaust, not a bike that turned in half the space a Harley needed. That is the actual difference the title is asking about, not badge, not price, not who signed the checks. Geometry. A Harley is built long, low, and stable in a straight line, because that is what its market has always wanted. A Buell is built short, light, and aggressive in a corner, because that is the only thing Erik Buell ever actually cared about building. 2 completely different design philosophies, operating under one parent company's balance sheet, for 6 of Buell's 26 years. Even the engine work Buell did, when it did touch the engine, went in a direction Harley's own lineup never did. In 2003, Buell's engineers tuned the Thunderstorm V twin to meet emission standards years ahead of schedule, without a catalytic converter, at a time when bolting one on was the industry's default answer to the same problem. Go back to the claim from the start of this video, the story where Buell was just a Harley wearing a different name on the tank. That story is wrong, and this is the part it gets wrong. The chassis underneath that borrowed engine was never Harley's idea, Harley's money, or Harley's engineering. It was the one part of Buell that Harley never actually made. On September 6th, 2009, Danny Eslick clinched the AMA Daytona Sport Bike Championship riding a Buell 1125R. It was Buell's first professional road racing championship in 26 years of trying. Buell celebrated that win on September 24th at a party held inside the Harley-Davidson Museum in Milwaukee. 3 weeks after that party, on October 15th, Harley's board announced they were shutting the whole company down. The official reason was a strategic refocus, resources concentrated back onto the Harley-Davidson brand alone. The real reason had a name. Keith Wandell, hired as Harley's CEO earlier that year, had never ridden a Harley before taking the job, and reportedly referred to Buell internally as Erik's racing hobby. Asked why anyone would even want to ride a sport bike, his team studied the numbers and came back with the answer he wanted. Sport bikes meant heavy competition and thin margins. Cruisers meant the opposite. Weeks after a Buell had just become a national champion, the company that built it stopped existing because of a spreadsheet about a different kind of bike entirely. Production ended October 30th, 2009. Final count, 136,900. 23 motorcycles built since 1983. Erik Buell did not stop. He went looking for a new engine supplier immediately and found one in BRP, the Canadian company that owned the Austrian engine maker Rotax. Erik Buell Racing started as a parts supplier in 2010, then moved into full production in 2011 with the 1190 RS, a $46,000 superbike built around a liquid-cooled Rotax V-twin. Hero MotoCorp, India's largest motorcycle manufacturer, partnered with the new company in 2012, hoping to license some of that same chassis engineering for its own lineup. Notice what that engine was not. It was not a Harley V-twin. For the first time in Buell's entire history, the man who built the chassis also controlled the engine underneath it, and he chose the one company that had nothing to do with Milwaukee. It did not save the business. EBR filed for bankruptcy in 2015, undone by the same problem that had always existed. A small American sport bike maker without the sales volume or dealer network to survive on its own, Hero's partnership included. So here is where the story actually stood by 2015. Killed once by a parent company that treated a championship-winning sport bike as a distraction from cruisers. Revived once by its own founder, on a completely different engine, backed by outside investment, and it still was not enough. Ask which Buell sold the most units, and the answer is not one of the sport bikes this video has spent the last few minutes on. It is the Blast. This is the answer to my question to you at the beginning. Did you got it right? Let me know in the comments section. Produced from 2000 to 2009, the Blast was a 492cc single cylinder, built using half of a Sportster V twin design rather than the whole thing. 34 horsepower, a 5-speed gearbox, plastic bodywork molded from Surlyn, the same material used on the outside of golf balls, so the bike could survive a beginner dropping it. It sold for under $4,400, and Harley used it as the bike in its own Rider's Edge training courses nationwide. More people learned to ride a motorcycle on a Blast than on any other single Buell model, by a wide margin. That is worth sitting with for a second. Buell's biggest commercial success was not one of the frame-in-tank, perimeter brake machines, the last section just spent 5 minutes on. It was the one model built almost entirely out of Harley parts. Sold at a price point Harley itself could never profitably hit with a full-size V-twin. Then, in July of 2009, 3 months before Harley shut the entire company down, Buell ran an ad announcing the Blast's discontinuation. The ad showed a Buell Blast getting fed into a car crusher. Nobody at the company could have known how literal that image was. Buell Motorcycle Company restarted again in November of 2021. New ownership this time, headquartered in Cascade Township, Michigan, led by CEO Bill Melvin, not Erik Buell, not Harley. A completely new group who thought the idea was still worth building. Every model in the current lineup runs the same engine, a proprietary 1190cc liquid-cooled V-twin the company calls the ET-V2, originally developed for AMA Supersport road racing and then adapted for the street. It shares no parts, no tooling, and no history with anything Harley-Davidson has ever built. For the first time since Erik Buell bought those 50 leftover XR1000 motors back in 1987, every Buell on the market runs an engine that belongs entirely to Buell. The Hammerhead 1190 is the sport bike, 185 claimed horsepower, 419 pounds dry, The same perimeter rotor braking concept Buell patented decades ago, still doing the same job on the outer rim of the wheel. The 1190SX is the Street Fighter version of the same platform, styled closer to the old XB series than anything else in the current range. The Super Touring adds weather protection and range to the same chassis and engine combination. Then there is the Super Cruiser, the newest of the four, and the one built to go after Harley directly. Liquid-cooled, 1190cc, 175 horsepower, priced around $26,000. And designed by Roland Sands specifically to compete in the cruiser category, Harley has always considered its own. The first production unit rolled off the line in Grand Rapids on September 26, 2025. 6,000 pre-orders came in before the first customer bike ever shipped. That kind of demand needed real money behind it. Buell secured an $18.5 million expansion of its Michigan facility, 120,000 square feet, 162 new jobs, backed partly by a grant from the state of Michigan. The stated plan is to reach 300 units a month by early 2026, then scale toward 28,000 motorcycles a year within 3 years, and to release 10 different models across the lineup by the end of 2026. The lineup is not finished growing either. A fifth model, the Baja 1190DR, an off-road capable version of the same platform, is already in development. The company is also expanding overseas, announcing a return to the United Kingdom through a partnership with a British retailer, decades after Buell first tried and failed to build any real presence there under Harley's ownership. There is no confirmed 2027 model yet, and I am not going to invent one just to give this video a cleaner ending. What is confirmed is the trajectory. A company that once could not afford to design its own engine is now selling 4 production models, with a 5th already in development, that share nothing with the brand everyone still assumes it belongs to. That is the actual answer to the question this video opened with. Buell was never the difference between a Harley engine and a Buell badge. It was always the chassis, the geometry, the decision to build short and light instead of long and low. Harley owned the engine for 22 years. It never once owned that. Go back to where this video started. 22 of 26 years on a Harley engine, bought out piece by piece until Harley owned all of it. Killed the same year it finally won a championship. That part of the story is true, every word of it. But the story everyone actually tells stops there, at the engine, at the ownership chart, at the name on the title. It never gets to the frame, the swing arm, the brake rotor, the 419 pounds. A modern hammerhead carries 185 horsepower inside of. It never gets to a company in Michigan right now, with no Harley money and no Harley engine, selling a cruiser with 6,000 people already waiting on one. Remember that Crusher ad from a few minutes ago, the one announcing the Blast's discontinuation, months before the whole company followed it into the same machine. Nobody running that ad knew how literal it was about to become. Nobody running Buell in 2021 knew the opposite was still possible either, that the thing everybody assumed was crushed for good could come back a third time, on an engine nobody at Harley had ever touched. Erik Buell never got to build the version of this company that owned its own engine from day one. He got 50 leftover RR1000 motors and a garage in Wisconsin instead, and he built something real out of it anyway. It took 38 years, 2 bankruptcies, and 3 completely different ownership groups for a Buell to finally exist without a single Harley part inside it. That is the part of Buell that ever actually mattered, and it was never the part people talk about. If you own a Buell, or you are one of the 6,000 people waiting on a Super Cruiser right now, tell me what convinced you. I want to hear it.